right, let's go to Richard. He says, fans forum, only the Dodgers are above 500 in the NL West. Is that's just weak, or is that just a slow start? Lee's eyes makes him look tough.
Yeah, linebacker eyes. By the way, I did not get punched. This is from retina surgery. But if I did get punched, Raider fan would still be in the hospital. Dodgers, it's all about how many pitchers are on the disabled list versus on the active roster. And that's been a big issue. Bullpen's a little shaky right now. They got 2 relievers. I think they're going to be okay. Small sample size, a lot of baseball to be played. But is Walker Buehler ready? And that's the big question. He's going to try to make one more rehab start Wednesday because he's not pitch dominant at AA or AAA. So keep an eye on that storyline as we go to Wednesday, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about it on our Thursday show.
Yeah, I think that the NL West doesn't have any trouble. It's still early. Hey, let's move on here. We got tons of other people involved. And we'll go here to Joey. And he says, I don't think the Raiders can get up to the 2 or 3 position to get Jaden Daniels. I think the Raiders trade down a little bit, pick up an extra pick, and Michael Penix.
Except if Penix suddenly gets drafted by Denver 1 spot in front of the Raiders. Now, it was interesting because John Cooper just said he liked the Raider quarterbacking. He thinks they develop Aiden O'Connell from Purdue, and obviously they're renting Gardner Minshew, who's got a little bit of a gunslinger persona. Now, the Raiders need running backs. Raiders need a lot of things. So I never thought the Raiders had the resources to trade that high up to get Jaden Daniels. And by the way, it's not Antonio Pierce's decision. Tom Telesco, the general manager, came totally out of character at their draft press conference the end of last week. I make the draft choice.
Wow.
So, period, exclamation point. No further discussion. Next question.
Okay, moving on. Well, Joey had a quick one here to add in. Hey, let me know if you need me to take care of somebody for popping you in the eye. I got you, Saw. Hope you have a speedy recovery.
Well, we're working hard at it. John's laughing. I was on TV on KUSI on Saturday, and I walked in the newsroom with sunglasses. I thought, because this really looks bad. And they knew I was having a surgical procedure. And I said, what do you think? And the girls in the newsroom said, nah, just go on the set looking like that. And I said, yeah, you're always about the flair and the look, etc. So I wore my glasses, and then at the end I took them off, and I said, this is why I look weird. I didn't do anything wrong, but if I had, the Raider fan, I'd still be in the hospital. They all had a laugh about that.
Well, here's another one. Hacksaw, you should see the other guy.
That's right. That's what I said. He's in the hospital in ICU. Thank you.
Okay, let's go to a real sports question. Hey, this is from Yin, and she says, Kawhi invented load management.
You know, the most unique aspect is the last couple of years, the Clippers use load management to handle his minutes to get him to postseason. This year, he played a lot of back-to-backs. This year, he played a lot of minutes. And it was not until we got to the finish line, all of a sudden, he's got this knee inflammation that they don't know where it came from, and they can't get it to go away. I mean, they're trying meds. They did an exam, an MRI, a scan. He does not have torn meniscus, which is what triggered the last incident a year ago. They just can't control it. You can only have so many procedures, and after a while, the knee gives out. And maybe there's a piece of reality, John, we should be dealing with, that he's at the end of the road as a great, great player in the league, only because of the physical wear and tear factor. But they didn't use load management with him this year, and he still got here, and he still got problems.
This is the same knee, right?
Same, 2 surgeries.
Yeah. You're right. You only have so many tendons, to fix down there. But it would be awful if his career ended. I mean, the guy is such a great talent, such an inspiration. I was so happy when he went to the Clippers, but we'll see how this goes. I mean, maybe could he come back for the second series if they advance?
He could, but again, if you're pounding, how many minutes is he going to play? What's he going to feel like the next day? That's the big issue. Next question.
Moving on. Okay, let's go here to Iron. Says Merrill should lead off for the Padres.
I'd think about it, though. Profar has much, much more experience, and I just think they need to change something at the top. Yeah, do they have the flashy big innings where they hit home runs and all of a sudden they come from behind? Yes, but they've not been able to put anything together from a consistency standpoint of getting guys on base every inning and getting them around. And you've got a leadoff guy that gets on base who can steal bases, and either Merrill or Profar can do that. Maybe you need to flip this lineup a little bit.
We should get Ricky Henderson in his prime. to come play for the Padres. He's my favorite baseball player of all time.
Ricky himself. That's what he called himself.
Exactly. But Merrill's not a bad choice to put up there. He's still hitting over 300. He makes contact. He doesn't strike out much.
And he runs the bases.
Yeah.
We move on.
Okay, here. I guess this is in response to the Trevor Bauer story from T. Will. He says, I struck out almost the entire roster of my son's Little League team. Where's my contract?
Yeah, but you were 32 doing it against 10-year-olds. That's not fair. Hey, the Mexican League is a much lower level. It's probably equatable to AA baseball. But the fact he's throwing BBs and the fact he's got great location, he is striking out guys. But there's also the fact of who he is and what he's gotten himself involved with and the lawsuits and everything. And what kind of reaction would there be in your community if your team signed Trevor Bauer? His team, no problem. He'd sign him yesterday.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, he's innocent. He's been dug by the gold digger. So let's move on here. Go to Callan. It says, hey, get well soon, Hacksaw. Do you believe Rod Blake would be on the hot seat if the Kings fall in their postseason kryptonite, the Oilers again in round one?
No, kryptonite and the Oilers, that's one and the same. They got goal scorers. We find out, are they a different team? I'm still concerned about the back end. I'm still concerned about the goaltending. I just don't know that they have red hot goaltending that can get you through a siege when you're under siege in somebody else's rink. That's a big issue. I don't think Blake's in jeopardy. He and Luc Robitaille, I think, are like this. They've jointly signed off on all these big money acquisitions. My critique is they've spent an awful lot of money on some guys that aren't $8 million players, but that's how Blakey and Lucky decided to mold this roster. I think it's going to be a great series. The one difference in Edmonton is that they still have the snipers, but the big difference is Skinner, the goaltender, is a lot better now as an experienced guy than last year when he looked like he was just overwhelmed with the aura of what the playoffs are.
What do you think of the TV broadcast for the NHL playoffs? I mean, I saw one of the games and the color analyst was a woman and she was very good.
They brought some in from Canada who've done a really good job. Studio shows to me are too much yappy. I don't know if I like. I mean, I'm a Gretzky fan. I'm a Messier fan as players, but I don't know that they add a lot of dynamics. I'm spoiled. I grew up watching Hockey Night in Canada when I lived on the East Coast and I got access to Hockey Night in Canada. I wish the fans in the States could see Hockey Night in Canada because that is an institution. But these broadcasts haven't been bad, and the game is the game, and that's what's the most important thing.
Right on. I mean, there's no way to get Hockey Night in Canada right
I don't
now?
believe so, no.
Wow. Okay, let's move on. Another hockey comment from Steve. He says, that Jets-Avs was a killer game. What a fun game one. Who takes it, you think, Saw? Kings got a shot versus Oilers versus McDavid?
Well, the Kings have a real challenge because McDavid, Draisaitl, and Zach Hyman scored 54 goals this year, and they have better goaltending. So I think this is going to be a tough run uphill for the Kings. But if they sneak one out in Edmonton, everything can change. The Jets and the Avs, I think Winnipeg has had a really good season. I think the construction of that roster is really unique because they've made a lot of trades, and the acquisitions they've gotten by virtue of these different deals, getting Clifford, getting Velarde, getting Toffoli, has really helped them a great deal. I was stunned, though, that they beat the Avs because the Avs are damn good. But Colorado has still got a lot of firepower. They got a lot of experience. Nathan McKinnon makes everybody else on that roster more dangerous. We'll see what happens in goal in Colorado because that goaltender gave up 7 goals, and he was really shaky in the third period fighting the puck. That might be a toss-em series. But the Jets win the second one, then they're in the driver's seat. If they lose, then the Winnipeg has to figure out a way to go into Denver and beat the Avalanche on that ice, and that's not easy.
Wow, man, Winnipeg fans are fired up, Lee.
Yeah, and you're buying Labatt's.
Labatt's, okay.
For the game too.
Okay. I remember Moosehead was another one. That was another beer from Canada. And John says, hey, how is NHL expansion going to go? Who gets it in with Arizona, Houston, Quebec? Can Kroenke get a building in San Diego and talk betterment into America's finest city?
Well, that's what I would wish and hope, that we might be able to get an expansion franchise. But then, Kroenke is building the new sports arena, but who's going to pay the expansion fee, which I'm told is going to be $2 billion. So that's a big question. Houston probably is a second market. I'm not sure that Atlanta should get a third kick at the can. I like Quebec City. I don't know if the ownership is up there. The 18,000 seat Olympic arena is there. I think it'd be a phenomenal regional market, even though there's a disparity between the American and Canadian dollar. But that's not 2024, pal. That's probably 2028. That's way down the road.
Way down the road. Always good to have expansion. He had another quick comment here. Death taxes and the Leafs sucking in the playoffs.
So far they are. Holy cow. You talk about the big bad Bruins. They just checked them into the ice. They eradicated Austin Matthews. He hardly had any shots on goal. And Boston just grinds on you. They're so big and so physical. So I'll tell you what happens if Toronto does not get out of this first round. If they get taken out by the Bruins, God, if they went out in 4 straight, Brendan Shanahan would probably lose his job as president of the team, and he was going to be the architect to bring this all together. Their payroll's phenomenal, and they've got all these big goal scorers. If they don't get there, he loses his job, and I would assume Keefe, the coach, Sheldon Keefe, would probably lose his job too. So it's right there in front of them, Toronto. It's on paper. They got this great roster. Haven't done it since 1967. Go figure that out.
1967? Really?
Last time they won the cup.
Yeah, they were always the classic team. Remember that game we played as kids with those poles that we would twist?
Yes.
Yeah, and had the dome, and we play hockey. It was always the Canadians and the Maple Leafs.
I beat my sister 9-1, and she cried, and I got yelled at.
Okay, let's go here to 4RXLA. Says, do you think Mike Scioscia will manage again? He's been seen at Dodger Stadium lately. He'd be a good replacement for Roberts, especially if the Dodgers are still playing 500 ball in June.
Everybody wants Dave Roberts gone. That's a little bit, that's off the charts. Mike Scioscia said over the weekend in Anaheim, because he does go to Angel games, he does go to Dodger games, he does not want to manage anymore. And again, he's been out of it for an extended period of time. I was surprised once he got removed, he never got back in, or maybe he did not want to get back in. I was surprised Joe Madden, after he got removed, he didn't get interviews to go back in either, but he's cut from a different cloth in terms of personality and relationships with the front office. So maybe Scioscia's time has come and gone because it's a very, very different game. And maybe people just didn't want to deal with Madden's opinions, and Joe Madden's opinions were strong. They were strong in Chicago, they were strong in Tampa, and they were surely strong in Anaheim.
Well, Anaheim needs some strong opinions, to right that ship. But the Scioscia going to the Dodgers is interesting to me because he won a World Series ring with the Angels, and he was very highly thought of as a manager in the league. And then, he just sort of retired, or did he get fired?
Well, he was removed.
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, the game has radically changed. Radically. And he is really old school. And there's nothing wrong with being old school because he's got a track record to back it up. But people think that, quote, the game passed you by.
Well, he was the starting catcher for the Dodgers like most of the 80s and into the 90s, I think.
Sure.
Yeah. So, that's like 3 or 4 decades ago.
Proven commodity.
Okay, let's move on. Let's go here to Manny. He says, have you heard any chatter of MLB umpires getting heat for some of their misused calls? Also, today an umpire ejected Aaron Boone because a fan chirped at the home plate umpire.
Boone was barking at Hunter Wendelstedt, first batter of the game against the A's. Wendelstedt had had enough. Wendelstedt took his mask off, walked towards Boone, and said, that's it. Next time you say something, he'll be gone. Put his mask on, walked back towards home plate. Suddenly, and I saw it, Wendelstedt wheels. He heard something, points to the dugout to Boone, you're gone. Boone was sitting on the steps of the dugout talking to his coach. It came from a fan right behind the Yankee dugout, and Wendelstedt wheeled, boom. And none of the other umpires who came in to stop this confrontation interceded. None of them sided with Boone. Here's Boone going crazy. He said, that fan right there, box seat 4. The one with the red cap. He's the one that said something about you. It wasn't me. And they had the video. They showed the video of Aaron Boone talking to his coach about something with the pitchers, and all of a sudden he's out of the game. The umpiring, home plate, balls and strikes have been god-awful. Thank you, Angel Hernandez. And Wendelstedt might be coming up the chart getting equal to that. How do you do that to a guy?
Yeah, I mean, that's nuts. I mean, that's ego, that's fragile ego going on there with the umpire. But yeah, give me the robo ump for the calls of the balls and strikes, because some of these guys are just insane.
Well, baseball's, they got a problem there. You can't fire all the umpires. And that's an awful radical change if we're going to computerize balls and strikes. I don't know if that works. It's being done in the minor leagues, some successfully in the lower minor leagues where they don't throw a hell of a lot of strikes, and some in the upper AA and AAA.
Okay, moving on here. Let's go to Steve. He says, assuming the Chargers pick a wide receiver first, who's the better fit, the Ohio State guy or the LSU guy?
Well, you can't teach 4.23, and that's what Neighbors ran, the kid from LSU. But you can't teach style, size, discipline to run the routes. And Marvin Harrison, Ohio State, is the son of the great Colt wide receiver. This is in his DNA. If you're asking me, I'd take Marvin Harrison. But if you're asking me as king, if you're going to run the ball and you want to better protect that quarterback, you should take one of those offensive tackles. And I happen to, everybody that I've canvassed has talked extensively about Joe Alt being the best by a far margin over the Penn State guy, over the Oregon State guy, because he's so big and he's got great arm length. And you can teach him to be a better run blocker or be a better pass blocker. That's mechanics. That's coaching. And that's why you draft these guys and then you develop these guys. So you could trade down, but these guys are gems. These guys are can't miss prospects. So I don't think I'd screw with that.
Can't miss prospect. Like Ryan Leaf, like, the quarterback from LSU that went to the Raiders.
Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah, that guy. I mean, there's no can't miss prospect. No such thing. If I'm the Chargers, I like the whole Ortiz bit about trading back and building assets. That's what I'd like to see. But here's just a crazy tangent comment.
Oh, from you in left field. Yes, I understand that.
Okay,
go ahead.
So, you say these big offensive linemen, they're tall, they got long arms. Have you heard the talk about North Carolina State center DJ Burns from the NCAA tournament?
The basketball player.
The basketball player. Maybe he could go to the NFL. What do you think of that idea?
Well, that's why they have the 6th and 7th rounds. You do stuff like that in addition to finding an odd great quarterback. But yeah, he's indicated, nah, I don't have any interest in playing football right now.
Really? He'd be pretty good. Okay, let's move on here. Let's go to Ted. He goes, don't understand questions about JJ. Midway through the year, he was the best quarterback in my opinion. Then Michigan went total conservative and that messed with JJ's confidence. He's the guy.
Well, that's up to these player personnel guys and why they've all met with him and why they went to Michigan's pro day, why they met with him personally. And they look at gobs and gobs, 2 years worth of video. So we're going to find out. That being said, and it's not that I'm not an advocate for J.J. McCarthy because the kid won. But let's be realistic here. He played on a great team. Massive offensive linemen who are going to be drafted. Running backs, wide receivers are going to be drafted. Defense. He played on a great team. Did he win some games? Yeah. Did he manage games? Hell of a lot more than he won. He managed games and made plays. So that's an intangible thing. That's why these player personnel guys do this all year round. They've looked at every snap, every game he played, the good games, the bad games, what defenses did to him. So we'll find out. Is he the 4th guy? Is he the 6th guy? Because that's some of the stuff that's out there. And somebody at the top of the draft is going to do something different. They'll trade out somewhere, and that may change the composition of what those picks are going to be right behind the team that makes the trade. It's a fascinating time. I love watching the draft.
It's going to be fun. And it's in Detroit this year, right?
Yes.
I saw the advertisements with Goodell and Eminem.
Yeah.
They're talking about the Detroit and all that. That's great. But wasn't J.J. McCarthy, early part of the college football season was like a 2nd or a 3rd round pick, right? He's really shot up the rankings.
Unbeaten. Somebody asked Joe Ortiz at the press conference last week, his Friday press briefing going into the draft. Michigan guys, would you take Michigan men? His response was, national champions. Why would I not take guys off that team? And he wasn't just making reference to J.J. McCarthy. He's making reference to B.J. Corum, the small, undersized, tough guy running back. He's making reference to Chris Jenkins. He's making reference to the cornerback. I happen to think the Chargers might draft Chris Jenkins in the 2nd round. I think they might spend a 3rd or a 4th round pick on the cornerback. I think his name is Mike Sinistril. He's a player. He's a gamer, a little bit undersized, but makes things happen. So like Ortiz says, why would I not take somebody from Michigan? They're national champions.
Well, it's like the Eagles took all those players from Georgia, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And they're national champions. So why not? Okay, here's another comment. I'm kind of interested in your thoughts here. This is also from Callan. He says, hate to be the guy who adds some gas onto the fire, but congrats to Ted Leitner on his tenure with San Diego State football and men's basketball, wishing him well in retirement after next basketball season.
Well, he's had a long career. He's had a very good career, the way he wanted to do it. And I guess that's cool. I got to do it the way I wanted to do it too, and it was pretty good too. You think about the experiences, not so much in football because the Aztecs haven't accomplished a hell of a lot in football. Won some games, have had Heisman Trophy candidates at running back. But think about the accomplishment of March Madness and going to the Sweet 16 and going to the Final Four. And by the way, you're broadcasting the championship game. So cool. If you're a broadcaster in the driver's seat, that is such an experience because it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing with this program to go to that level. So he did really well for a long period of time. He's had health issues like I've had health issues. That junk seems to catch up to you. So it'll be interesting to see what life without play-by-play is like because as I learned, it takes adjustment. It's really different.
Well, I will say this, that John Schaefer taking over for Ted, I think the world of him. I think he's really good. And I think it's a bright future. They're grooming him for basketball too. So, kudos to Ted. He's been a San Diego sports guy for decades. But yeah, it's just a change of the guard.
I was fascinated after he got removed at Channel 8 and he just did Padres. I was surprised he never surfaced again to do TV because he was different and he was well watched, but he was making mega money when they paid mega money to TV people. They're not doing that anymore. So maybe that's the reason he didn't want to do it. So hope his life in retirement is rewarding, but when you got health issues, it changes the concept of a lot of things. And he had the cancer scare with a kidney, which is really serious stuff. And he has had eye problems too. And they've not been able to solve his.
Wow. Yeah. It's fun following the sports media in town. Hey, you want to do social media?
Let's do a couple quick hits here before we're asked to leave the building.
Okay. All right. Let's go here to, the pitching pandemic comment. This is from Barry, and this is from a YouTube comment. He goes, I was talking about this with my physical therapist who played D1 baseball and now helps athletes recover from shoulder and elbow injuries. In addition to pitchers chasing velo and spin rates, he believes the problem begins at the youth level. All modern major leaguers grew up playing travel ball, playing 3 to 4 times the games as their predecessors. Those who had pitching talent are overused by ambitious coaches, hence the relatively recent push to monitor youth pitch counts.
Concur. I'll check off every one of those boxes because the great young pitcher is now trying to develop velocity. In some cases, they are throwing some of that wicked stuff that puts wear and tear on arms. A lot of coaches don't let you do that. What you do between starts at that level is really hugely important. The surgeons who do these now repairs, the Tommy John procedures, about 3 or 4 of these guys now that specialize in it, they're seeing a lot more college pitchers and they're seeing high school kids have to have this done. And it's terrible. I mean, parents, I'm not going to say are to blame, but parents are to blame.
Yeah.
And I speak from experience because my son was an All-American wrestler in college and high school and did very well. And you want to see your kid do well. You want to excel. I'm not living through my kid. I have my own career and my own life and my own popularity, but parents want their kids to do well. And if that means developing velocity and throwing breaking pitches at a young age, sometimes they don't pay attention to what the long-term effect could well be. But it's a crisis. And Clayton Kershaw said, we're all out here to win, and we're all out here to be the best we can. And if me throwing 99 or me being able to get break on my stuff, you do it because you want to be successful, and then there's a big contract at the end of the rainbow for you. But now the fatality rate is just phenomenal. I mean, I chart this stuff with my Hacksaw headlines. We're averaging, I'd say, 5 major elbow injuries, shoulder injuries a week. A week in baseball. 2 weeks ago, we talked about, I think I counted there were 21 elbow surgeries since spring training. I think there've been at least 10 more in the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
And that's at major league level, and that's top guys in the minor league levels. Everybody, I'll give you an example. Everybody in Pittsburgh is excited about the number 1 pick, this pitcher, Paul Skeens from LSU, throws 104, just striking out everybody in AAA in Indianapolis right now. But I look at him, and I think that's great. He's going to get up here, and it's a different level, and you have to develop and do more. How long does he hold up before something happens? Because it's happening to virtually 1 out of every 2 great pitchers in baseball has got some type of problem.
Reminds me of Steven Strasburg.
Exactly.
When he was in college, just blowing everyone away.
And he got hurt very early in his Washington Nationals career. They did the elbow surgery. They fixed it. He came back. He continued to dominate him. You talk about lightning electric stuff. And what happened? Shoulder. What happened? Neck, blood clot. What happened? Nerve damage. Never recovered. That's a shame. He got his contract. He got his money. Could have been a Hall of Fame pitcher. I mean, he had 162 wins and a lot of years in front of him, but because of what he was throwing, he broke down.
Interesting. So my son pitched in high school and in D1, and it's all about velo. That's all that they want. The whole incentive structure throughout the whole, from little league on up, is who can throw the hardest, right? So that's part of the problem. But I will go here, to what Barry was saying, with some coaches will overuse players. I was fortunate because my son had a good coach that taught him the right mechanics, and his managers did follow pitch count limits. But I remember there was one kid here in our Poway community who was just the killer pitcher in Little League. And then they played travel ball, 13, 14-year-old, and he blew out his arm because the coach pitched him too much.
Yeah, it takes a definition. These are the rules. This is what you do. This is what you don't do between starts. It takes discipline to make it happen. A couple more social media posts here before we wrap up Fans Forum.
Okay, let's go here. A little OJ comment from Philip. He goes, Lee, do you have a copy of your interviews with OJ? It would be fascinating to watch as a retrospective.
Nah, I don't have any of those. That goes back a long time ago in sports talk radio. But I've gotten a lot of response to my One Man's Opinion column and what I did on Instagram about O.J. Simpson. And we've gotten feedback from other people who've read other things about black jurors making insinuations. This is a payback for what white America has done, which in essence meant this guy was guilty and you let him off because he was a star or he was an African American. And I guess the most appalling thing to me, and I look back and I understand you're dealing with some cases, dirty cops, mishandling of DNA. The fact that Nicole Brown Simpson called the Brentwood and LA police 63 times about domestic incidents in that house while she was married to that guy, and that guy was never charged. And then she wound up being dead. I mean, it's just a horrific story for those families. And trial of the century, yeah, probably the greatest injustice trial of the century too, in terms of the outcome. At least that's one man's opinion, and I'm entitled to my opinion.
Yes, you are. But it's interesting. I've been to your house, and your garage is full of stuff that you've collected from your career, and even in your living room where you hang out and watch television and watch all the sports. I'm surprised that you don't have like archives, but maybe that wasn't a thing back in the 80s and 90s.
Well, you kept tapes, but the problem was the tapes deteriorate.
Yeah.
And I was not technically oriented to be able to transcribe stuff and put them on CDs. And I was too busy working, doing talk shows to impress you so we could do this podcast. But that stuff's been there, gone, but the memories live on.
They live on. Okay, you got an angel comment here. And this is from Richard. And he says, one man is responsible for this train wreck since losing the 2009 ALCS to the Yankees. Worst farm system in MLB since 2010. No top shelf level American high school players since number 27, Mike Trout. No top shelf Latin star since K-Rod. Won't sign top shelf level pitching talent. I knew Blake Snell wasn't coming, LOL. They rushed their top prospects since Joe Adell, followed by Matt Tyson, Zach Neto, and now Nolan Schonnel. By the way, these last four guys were all 22 years old college players because their player development is in the toilet, and it is useless for coaching up younger American high school kids or Latin players.
Making reference, obviously, to the whole operation under the umbrella of Artie Moreno. The Angels owner. Bill Stoneman was a really good general manager. They put Bill Bavasi Jr. in as GM, and I think he was manager there with, who was there? Collins was the manager. And I thought that was a pretty good consortium. And then it kind of fell apart. And I don't know whether it was on Terry Collins or whether it was on Bavasi or whether it was on ownership. I think that might have been the tail end of the Disney era. I had great hopes that when Artie came in, he was going to do a lot of things, and he did a lot of things early on. And then they kept making mistakes, and then they kept making bad investments, and they didn't draft well, etc. So it cascades. If you can't fix it and you don't hire the right people to fix it, and Artie doesn't know player personnel, all he's doing is writing the checks. But if he says, I want to sign Josh Hamilton or I want to sign Justin Upton, your general manager probably has to do it. So they've got guys in the farm system. It's a long way back because now the injury factor in baseball impacts your roster more on an annual basis than anybody realizes. And you can have all these players. I mean, Baltimore, Orioles, lost. And Mike Elias came in as general manager from Houston, and he kept drafting high, He hit on every one of the draft picks. You look at the roster, they're all from the Oriole farm system. But that being said, they lost one pitcher already, John Means, who's not come back. He was the ace of their staff. Second guy, Kyle Burdish, is hurt, coming off his own elbow problems, shoulder problems. He's not back yet. He's in the middle of rehab. So you can have all these blue chippers, but the fatality rate of pitching in baseball is bad. And if you lose one or two of your top guys, it's impossible to replace them. So it's just a lot of complex things that go into making a roster work. And obviously, the Angels have made a lot of mistakes too.
Well, even this Jackson Holiday kid, everyone said was a can't-miss prospect, and he's been striking out a mile a minute, right?
Oh, he's under a lot of pressure. He's putting a lot of pressure on himself. Sometimes they're not ready, but that's okay. They sent Mickey Mantle back to the Kansas City. I think it was Kansas City Royals of the American Association like 2 or 3 times.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you ought to get out of the house more. Go to the library. Mickey Mantle was a shortstop. Could not field a ground ball. He made like 42 errors in minor league baseball. Yet they brought him up, made him an outfielder. He was great. Didn't hit worth a lick. He was crying the day Casey Stengel told him, "You're going back. You got to go back to the American Association."
Really?
He was going to quit. His father came from Oklahoma and picked him up and said, "You're not quitting. You're going back to," it might have been Kansas City or Joplin. It was either their top farm club or their second. He went down there, learned how to hit, made him an outfielder, and became a superstar.
Unbelievable.
So guys get sent back.
Yeah.
And Jackson Holiday will probably be going back to AAA.
He probably will.
To Norfolk, but that's okay. That's just part of the growth process. I mean, Jackson Merrill is unique. Is unique to stay here all year and hit 280 to 312. I don't know, but we'll find out. But that's what young guys are all about.
Going back to the Angels, you were just talking about the Disney ownership. I'm trying to remember the history because Gene Autry had it for a long time.
Long time.
Then Disney took over, and then did Moreno take over after Disney?
Yes. Yeah, Disney ran it, and they had some success. And then Disney lost interest in pro sports. Disney also owned the Anaheim Mighty Ducks when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals and just kind of lost interest. To me, the most disturbing thing was I've been to Angel games, and I've been to what was then the Pond to watch the hockey team, to see the owner's box, the big expansive box behind home plate, or at center ice up on the roof of the pond, to see it dark all the time.
Really?
Disney just kind of lost interest. And they have a big mega company doing other things, movies and TV shows and the Disney Channel, et cetera. But that was sad because their intent was good coming in, had some success, and then just kind of frittered it away with all the changes and the CEOs and all that.
Amazing. I mean, it's just such a perfect corporate schmoozing opportunity.
Yeah.
To hang out in the skybox.
I'm waiting for some of your friends to invite us back to a Padre game. They got the corporate boxes. Hey, listen, we hope you have enjoyed this extended